have to do, because I have to, she wasn't here to remind me, I have to say, we're recording. Look who she just showed up. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. By my clock, it is 2:05. And that, of course, is the time when we start the exchange. We're making a recording of this because we know we're going to have lots of exciting comments and suggestions. And we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to hear all of these wonderful things that we talk about and share. And that's put in the chatter for us, in our group chatter. I put that there 2 days after we've made this call. So without any further ado, our topic today is plans for welcoming volunteers face-to-face or virtually. And even though we're not going to start out with plans to welcome volunteers, we're going to talk about things that are exciting and how to make some of our meetings even more interesting. So, Dr. Clark, would you like to begin?
Yes, I would. And welcome, everybody. I can't tell you how excited I am about today. And it all started with just a really innocent conversation that Bettina Robeson and I were having just to catch up. And what it turned into is a treat that I get to share with all of you today. In Florida, oh my goodness, when I heard about how the meetings go with the Florida team, I said, okay, I got to do a couple things with this. First, I got to share it with more people, but I want to go to Florida and I want to be in one of those meetings because I want to see those balcony divas, and you're going to see what I mean in a few minutes. I love to laugh, even during meetings. Laughter, I think, is something that's so important because many times meetings are so dull and boring that nobody wants to be there. But if you see what happens in Florida at a meeting every time, it's the complete opposite. It makes you want to be at the meeting. So what I asked Bettina to do today was to share some highlights and insights about what they do in Florida to make their meetings exciting. Now, this is just to make the meetings exciting. It's a lot of work. It is, because they have some technology talented people. But what you're going to see today, Bettina, is what they do to create welcoming environments for their volunteers, what they do to bring energy to their meetings, and making use of tools that are available to all of us. So Bettina, without further ado, I think, can you take it from there? You and those balcony divas, so I can get a good laugh on.
Oh, Mary, thank you so much. Congratulations on your retirement. And I love your diva tiara.
Thank you. They gave it to me.
You got
so
it going
I just came out of the
on.
meeting. Thank you. Take
So
it away.
Thank you. If I could, I'm going to ask the vaults to raise their hands and show us the hearts. Terry, if you could raise your virtual hand. So basically, everybody, this is how we open a meeting. All of our meetings have themes. And as everybody's waiting in the waiting room, we are preparing. And what we do is we raise our hands so that we're all at the top of the screen and we're all together. And the particular theme for our last meeting was Love is in the Air. So we all had little hearts. And playing in the waiting room was the video with all red hearts all over the place. Nat King Cole's L is for the way you look at me. That's what they saw in the waiting room. And when they came into the meeting, they saw all of our red hearts. And we had another one called Let Your Light Shine. We've only done 3 meetings. And the Let Your Light Shine, what they saw when they came in was little candles. Now, these are just little fun things that you can do to make your meetings a little bit more interesting. You're utilizing Zoom, doesn't require any crazy tech. So now I'd like to ask all the vaults to lower their hands and turn off their videos. And we always have people coming into music. So once people are in, the music's playing and you see us kind of dancing in the background. That's how we open the meetings. Now I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show a few things that basically you can do with only PowerPoint and Zoom. And it's just using it in a very imaginative way. I use a couple of other tools, and I'm going to share those tools with Deborah to share with everyone on the exchange. And we can share all that with you if you wanted to use additional tools. But here's one thing. Ty and I are members of the Portal Champions, as I'm sure a lot of you are. And we had to do a presentation for our Portal Champion meeting. And we said, oh no, we're not going to do just your normal everyday presentation. Can you see my screen here with the Portal Champ and the divas here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And does anybody know what this building is? Great, it's the AARP building in Washington, DC. So basically, let me make sure I'm sharing my sound here. Yep, I'm sharing my sound.
Mhm.
So basically, Ty and I started our meeting with this first slide here. That was our first slide. And when it stopped, we went into our presentation, we did our portal training. And at the very end of it, we did our last slide to close out our portal training. And again, this is just PowerPoint, a little bit of sound under your PowerPoint and some little artwork with the, the PowerPoint. So this is how we closed it out. And you'll notice Ty's going on a cruise and she wants to make sure her lipstick is right. She's always got to have her lipstick on before she comes into a meeting. Okay, so that's just one little thing that we did, or you can do. And now I'm going to share, this is our opening video for one of our meetings. And the theme to this meeting was Let the Light Shine. I'm going to play just the first 2 minutes. I'm not going to play through the entire thing. I want you to see how we utilized PowerPoint and video in our Zoom to actually do this little opening. So as you can see, when everyone came in, we have 9 volts. So there were 9 people with their candles on. So here we go with the opening. And this is all a recorded opening that we did. With some sound effects. And we make our presentations a show.
Hello, everyone. May I have your attention, please? Welcome to the AARP Florida Volts Theater and the quarterly meeting of all AARP Florida volunteers, the first quarterly meeting of 2022. Featuring our keynote speaker, Andrus Award recipient, and Mega Region Volunteer Director, Mr. Ken Thomas. Please take your seats as the show is about to begin.
I'm just so tired of these meetings.
Why?
I hate Zoom meetings. My feet are swollen, my legs are swollen. I've been sitting in front of the computer all day. I'm just tired of these Zoom meetings.
I promise you this meeting will go fast because it's gonna be a lot of fun. These Florida Volunteer Squirrel meetings are a lot of fun. Look, they're ready to start.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Let's go. Let's get this show on the road.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
So I'm going to stop right about here.
Everywhere I go.
So throughout the rest of this song is basically pictures and a slideshow of Florida volunteers doing what Florida volunteers do. And then immediately after the slideshow, we go right into our presentations and the things we're discussing during the meeting. And what we do for the MC, we hand over from volt to volt to volt. Take it away, Ty, and then Ty says, take it away, Cleta. So the meeting, it's got a quick, snappy opening, and it also has a momentum that's going. People pay attention, they love it. And as you can see, the divas came into the meeting. They're like the old dudes in the Muppet Show, right? Those old guys that sit in the balcony. And that's what our balcony divas do. And they had a really fun thing that they did with the with their AARP cards. They were talking about their seats and how they got these great seats and they got it on discount, and they flashed their AARP cards in one of their little videos. These are all pre-recorded. You can record these in Zoom. How did I get them in the balcony? I used the immersive view in Zoom, and I put a little balcony there, and I just put their little pictures in the balcony. So, you know, these are the kinds of things that we share on the Volunteer Fast Track in the campus. I'm going to be teaching a campus class on how to do, how to put videos in your waiting room. So slowly but surely, as we do our campuses, we'll be training this. Now, this is our very last meeting. Love is in the air. And of course, you know, we had the divas again. And this whole thing was about Fraud Watch. Debbie here found the love of her life, and he only needed $10,000 to come from a foreign country to come and visit her. And throughout the 3 points in the meeting, they talked about how Debbie needed to go to Fraud Watch and save herself $10,000. And it was really cute at the end. And because the theme was love is in the air, we took 5 volunteer couples that wanted to share their lives with us, and we interviewed them. We did a series of little interviews like this one right here. And we pre-recorded these as well.
We met in 1985.
And then at the end, we just did a little thing like this. So each couple had their own little stint here. And I wanted to share with you Ty's and Jeff's because it was a little bit different. We always like to add humor where we can.
Jeff and I met in Idaho, where we were stationed. We were serving in the Air Force, and we've been married since 1987. And I've been volunteering for AARP for 7 years, and Jeffrey came in later.
So that's just an example, you know, and then we did a little memorial for one of our beloved volunteers that passed on. And then, you know, upcoming events, and we do different topics, and we have different speakers come in from throughout our state to share our state mission and how we're keeping on track with our mission, advocacy issues, different trainings. So we do a lot of things. And then on this one, we had something really fun where the balcony divas talked about, let me just do this and find it quickly here. The balcony divas talked about filling in the volunteer registration form. I'll just play a little bit of it.
Woo, I am ready to go. I have my bag, I have my hat, and my AARP red shirt.
Volunteering in person, we need to complete this form. You don't have to.
So they did that, and then we actually showed in the meeting how to do the form, why you need to do the form,
go back,
you know, that kind of thing.
As an AARP volunteer,
So let's see, how do I stop this now?
you are required to sign this form and have it.
Okay, great. So that's just a few little things that we do. And again, they can be done with PowerPoint and using Zoom and making little recordings. Now you have a editor on your computer. You have free editing software through a program called Canva, little things that we use that are all free. But again, you can do it with just PowerPoint and recording in Zoom. And someone I noticed in the chat asked what the immersive view is. It is a view. When you go up to the top of your screen, if you have it turned on where it says view, you can change it to immersive. I don't know if Deborah has immersive or not, but if you do, Deborah, you could demonstrate it. And what it does is it puts you in a scene, and you can put your own little scenes in there. And I used my balcony as a scene and put Ty and Debbie in. And by the way, Ty and Debbie are fabulous. They are so good at these little scenes that they do. And, you know, we just have fun in our meetings, and it's kept our meetings at about 80 to 100 people every quarter. There's an interest there. And once our state president and our director of operations found out a little bit more about it, they were so much more inclined to be very supportive, which they are anyway. But, and if I could I just have Ty, she's the leader of our Volts, maybe just say a couple things about our energy and our teamwork.
Thank you, Bettina. Did anybody say energy? Excitement. That's what we're all about, As you can see, okay, first of all, I want to give it to Bettina. She's saying, no, you only have to do this and you only have to do that. But actually, Bettina is a magician. She's
Thank
our
you, Ty.
treasure. And she makes it sound so simple, but it takes some time. But again, everything in life takes time. So as you can see, our quarterly meeting is like a well-orchestrated symphony. It's organized by the vaults. We have like a subcommittee, and then after it's organized, every vault has placed a different instrument, during the execution of the plan. So we call it, PIE, plenty of fun, interesting, and educational. And yes, we do have fun during our meetings. That is why everybody wants to be part of our meetings, okay? I'm talking about staff, they want to come up, because they know that we reach out to a lot of volunteers in Florida. So
Thank you, Ty.
Mm-hmm.
And our Volt staff lead is here, Terry Elder. Just want to say a quick hello to her, and also Cleta Wolverton. You see her heart. She's one of our Volts as well. And I just thank you all so much for coming in with us today. Love it. And thank you for inviting us. We really love to share what we do. And as a matter of fact, we're helping another state now do their very first all volunteer state meeting. We're kind of in the background helping with some of the tech and the actual running of it. And that's going to happen. And we're just so excited about it.
Thank you, Bettina. Now, see what I was talking about? If that was the type of meeting that we all had an opportunity to participate in, I'd go without any complaint. I'd show up early every time. So Bettina, thanks so much for sharing, along with Ty and Terry and Cleta. Thanks so much for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Megan.
Thanks, Mary. That was amazing. Like total Zoom goals on my part, I think. Hopefully I can get there someday. So we are talking about how we're kind of welcoming back volunteers, obviously virtually and in person. And so our first question is just, I think, a pretty general one, and just what are all of our states doing to reconnect with volunteers, maybe perhaps volunteers that haven't been particularly active over the last couple of years, whether you're doing phone calls or planning some in-person meetings. We just want to kind of hear from folks. And I don't see any hands up. I can start. I'm in Minnesota, and we are going to be having monthly volunteer kind of welcome back open houses at our state office. And so we have our first one next week, where we're just having volunteers sign up to come in and hang out and check in with staff. They're going to be an hour to an hour and a half long, and open house style. So you don't have to stay the whole time. We'll provide some snacks and beverages. So we have, I think, around a dozen or so people signed up for the one next week. And we're trying to piggyback on as well off of maybe some other meetings. So the one we're having next week is going to follow our fraud volunteer team meeting. So we're assuming, people who are coming in the office for that meeting will stay for the open house, and we'll do them monthly through the summer. It's also a good opportunity to get volunteers to sign that COVID vaccination form. So in the reminder and confirmation emails, we have the instructions for signing it. And then I'm able to kind of follow up with people as well as they register for them. And then obviously, I mentioned, we're having a fraud meeting. We're just jumping back in and starting to have some of our volunteer meetings in person and hybrid as well. And Ernestine, I see your hand up.
So the Central Ohio Volunteers are planning an event. We have not been given permission yet. We're trying to do it in the park to secure a shelter house in one of the parks and have it called Open House in the Park, welcoming back volunteers. And we're trying to schedule it so it's a fun event, but also allows people to say, yes, I want to come back and this is what I'd like to do first. So that's where we are. Hopefully we'll get permission to do that. Thank you.
That's great. And having it outside, I think, can help people maybe feel a little bit more comfortable as well. Mary.
Okay, so I have to tell you, I'm finding it hard going from the virtual to in-person to a hybrid. Believe me, there's a lot of moving parts. Our Speakers Bureau is starting to have some in-person presentations. They're going to have one this month and another one next month. We have 3 active communities that we combined as one group when we were virtual. And so now we're trying to prepare to meet with them in person. And that's a lot of moving parts too, because you have to sign the form, you have to figure out where you're going to go. And we're going to basically, that first meeting, not even use it as a planning meeting. It's going to be, okay, let's reconnect with old volunteers, new volunteers that have come on board since we've been virtual. We are still holding our virtual meetings. I mean, I have a leadership meeting once a month to kind of plan for a monthly volunteer meeting, because we're still not sure where things are at. And quite frankly, I don't know if the numbers go up if we have to go back to being virtual again either. So we do have some hybrid activities going, and we do have, we are going to be doing in each of our 3 communities an ice cream night.
That all sounds fun. Byron, what do you have?
I have a question. You're just talking about hybrid meetings. I'd like to know more about that. So I'm assuming like we're going to have our first volunteer meeting for face-to-face in June with the middle division. So it'll be somewhere between 20 to 25 people. Now, so my question to you again goes, are you doing by hybrid meeting in person as well as those who can't come to that, doing it on a virtual basis? And if so, how are you doing this?
That's been the tricky part, Byron, that we've been trying to work out. We're looking for a meeting place, number one, that would have the technology that we are able to have volunteers who cannot or who do not feel comfortable coming to an in-person meeting. And somebody told me that you could have a laptop at the meeting and there's a camera, it's called an owl, that's supposed to apparently help so that you can see everybody in the room. And the only other thing I think with hybrid that I think would be a challenge is being able to hear what's going on for the person who is virtual, because I've attended some meetings where they've, been hybrid, and it's, if you don't have a speaker right there, you can't hear what's going on in the room. So that's why I'm saying there's been a lot of challenges trying to figure out or the moving parts with going in person.
Yeah, and we're looking at investing in some technology. Like I've heard about the owl as well, like having extra cameras, extra microphones, so that everybody can see and hear each other. So we're gonna, we're gonna dive right in and test it out in the next couple of weeks and see how it goes, and then see what we need to invest in. And we're just, our meetings we're gonna do in our kind of large conference room, and we have, some technology already there. I just want to just address a couple of comments in the chat. I think, Oregon, Sarah said she's doing an open house on May 25th for volunteers. And then Kathy Kynes uploaded a document that has guidance on kind of the 3 different types of volunteer meetings. So if people need information around that, I think that's really helpful as well. Okay. And then Susan Turley, a good way to have an in-person with various comfort stages is to have various colored lanyards. like red for please don't hug, etc. Yellow for some touch is okay, and a green for hug away. That way people know immediately what others want. And I've heard a similar thing, easier than lanyards. I was at a meeting recently and they had the sticky name tags, and then you put a colored dot, or they color coded the name tags. And so it was red, you don't want anybody to hug or, keep your distance, yellow, some touch, and then green, hug away. So I think that's a great way to do it too. Linda, what do you have?
I was just going to say, we're going to have one of our committee meetings and everybody signed the form. So we're all set with that. It's going to be in a park. There is a shelter, but we're getting to that point, but it's just our numbers are of the CDC scale for the Northeast is not great. And so we're just not even going there with new and open events until we get to the point it looks like it's pretty mellow. It's just not worth the effort to try to plan it and then have to cancel, which is what we would do. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Can I ask you, Linda, real quick, because I've not gotten a straight answer. What did you have to do for getting it? It's a volunteer only event in the park, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Did you go through any extra steps?
No,
it's
because
volunteers are signing off on their forms, but you didn't have to do anything else.
No,
okay.
it's less than 6 people are getting together. And the reason we had it at this particular park was because one of the people has special needs, and this is an easy place for her to access it. So, that was the beauty of having all of our events being virtual, is that it didn't matter what your abilities were, except maybe with Zoom. And now we're getting to that point too, that can be a barrier. So another consideration along those lines with the hybrid system, I guess.
And you're doing it 6 or less in these gatherings, right? Okay.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Well, Megan, I wanted to just say, because Kentucky actually has had a volunteer meeting already. And Ellen, in answer to your question, we didn't do anything special. All of the people who were in attendance had completed their registration form, but there was one person who chose not to come and not to be a part of it. So the staff person just set up her computer and reversed the camera so she could see, this person could see, I don't know if it was male or female, could see as much of the group as possible and hear us. And the meeting was held indoors as well. There were some people who came who chose to wear masks, and the staff person had selected a space that she thought was going to be adequate for people to space themselves out if they work, and immediately people went to the same tables where everyone was and stayed together. And you can probably see some pictures on Facebook showing people wandering around in this small amusement park area and just being very close. So that was our first in-person meeting with volunteers. And apparently it did work, and we're going to do it now going forward. So just wanted to throw that out there. It is possible.
And my understanding, because volunteer meetings are internal facing events, are not external, that all we need to do is have volunteers sign off on the vaccination form. There isn't all of the other steps that need to go into external events. So I think it's much easier to pull off a volunteer meeting these days than a larger public facing event. Kathy, do you have a comment or question?
Hi, yeah, thanks. Let me take my hand down. 2 things. One is the piece that I put in the chat has 2 sides to it, and one side kind of goes through this differences for if it's in the office versus in community. So you can check that out if you want to see the suggested steps or checklist. The reason I raised my hand, though, was in this conversation, which I love, about how folks are coming back. One thing that I heard from Kelly Von Steen in Pennsylvania, who sometimes is able to come, was rather than look for a hybrid meeting as the solution, she's instead looking at a mix of in-person and virtual. So I just wanted to put that out as yet another alternative. There is no right way, but her regular monthly team meetings are going to be in person. I think once a quarter, they're going to have a virtual meeting for everybody, and her speakers bureau, which started virtually during the pandemic, will remain virtual only. So she's got one team speakers bureau that will just meet virtually, one team, the kind of traditional community team that plans to meet in person. I think she's talking about like a virtual all volunteer meeting several times a year. But that's just another possibility. So thanks for the conversation. I'm taking notes.
Sarah?
Okay.
Yes, hi. So, I love this question. Because we've been thinking about it quite a bit actually, and how we're going to reintegrate, make our volunteers, all our volunteers feel like, they're part of the organization in whatever way they choose to come in. And, what I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of you all have too, is that some of the benefits of the virtual volunteers, we can reach anybody in Oregon. Normally we recruit along the I-5 corridor, but with this virtual environment, we have new volunteers from the coast or from, Central Oregon, places where we normally don't have a physical presence. And so, in thinking about these meetings, I think just virtual is going to be here to stay with some of them, just because of the benefits. Like we do meet and greets every month where we invite people to come in and hear from volunteers about the work that we're doing in Oregon. And if they're interested in volunteering, then we do kind of a one-off peer interview with them and then invite them to an orientation. And, if they were to have to do that whole process in person, drive 2 hours somewhere, do that, it's just not reasonable nor feasible. So I think that, like with us too, our speaker bureau meetings, I think are going to remain virtually, but we are going to do, like some trainings in person. So in small groups. So that's how Oregon's dealing with it. But, I just think that with people's uncomfortability too, because everybody's at such different levels, kind of like what Susan was saying in the comment, sometimes it's just hard to gauge on, and of course, so that I think that's why it's important to meet volunteers where they are.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Megan. Ellen, would you like to take your next question?
Sure thing. Yeah, I said I think we really have learned quite a bit through the pandemic. Glass half full. This virtual world has taught us quite a bit. Thanks, Sarah. So the next guiding question is, are you recognizing and orientating volunteers differently depending on how they came to the team?
Say more, please.
What challenges? I'm not, to be honest with you, Deborah, maybe you can help me out. Are we talking about the approach to different types of orientation, to a different type of volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, it's more, we've got some volunteers who came on board in the pandemic, and then we've got some who came on before. So are we going to treat them differently? Do we think they need different things? Is there some way to make sure that everyone ends up on the same page and has the same understanding? And I know Fast Track is clearly going to help with that. That's one good way that people can go to an orientation that's the same. But I just wondered if individual states were doing things a bit differently, recognizing who they've got.
It looks like Terry, you have your hand up.
Yes, and Florida folks, I'm going to call on you. I'm going to still do part of the last question. I'd say for the best way to describe us is we're in process. That is, The most likely to have gotten back in person is, I'm going to guess, the South Florida team, Ty and Bettina. Is something planned for y'all yet, or where are you in that process? Ty and Bettina, not yet? There goes
Yes, I'm
Ty.
here.
Mhm.
We are planning a get together for the leaders in June. And
Okay.
everything depends on the color of the day.
Mhm.
You know,
That's
if
right,
it's
because y'all went up.
yellow, red, or whatever, but we're planning an outing, you know, for the leaders. And then from there, we're planning something big, you know, for the rest of the volunteers in October. You know, so that's
Okay.
what right now we're planning on that.
Okay, and keep into virtual in the
Yes,
meantime.
mhm.
Okay, that's real helpful. Cleta, I'm going to call on you if that's okay. What's going on in Tally? Any news yet? And it could be because we have meetings on a Wednesday that we're discussing this very thing. So have you heard anything from Chris in Tallahassee in Northern Florida?
Right now, Chris wants to do some meetings outdoors with the smaller groups.
Okay.
Somebody mentioned about meeting in the park, that kind of thing. And so that's the last that I heard. He's working toward that because he really wants to get back in person. And of course, we have to get our folk to fill out their registration forms. And so that's a challenge as well.
Thanks, Cleta. And Ken's in my area, so I know, Ken, you haven't heard from me about in-person in Palm Beach. I cover a large area across the state, and so I have 4 teams of volunteers. And I'm doing a small meeting of Southwest Florida. It's Collier Lee and Charlotte, because an advocacy staff is coming to town to visit a legislator and has asked for me to gather advocates from this area. And so we're under 6 and we're doing that on Friday. It's an outside patio covered with a sun blocker that we'll be meeting at. And this will be our first attempt. Everybody's signed who will be there. So it's really not a team meeting even, it's an advocate meeting. I will say that, and that was going to be my first attempt, that it seems that those who've met in person before are certainly anxious to get back in person. And those who came to us during the pandemic, of which I was fortunate to have a great, great volunteers. It's not quantity, it's quality, but some great volunteers came to us through the pandemic, and they have a desire to meet in person. They want to meet somebody. But at the same time, I hear from many of them, I would say over half of that small number of volunteers, they say, oh no, I'm going to do virtual, but they do want to meet and get a sense of being an in-person event. So we are still in process. And Ken, I would never want to keep you from sharing your insights. So what do you hear, Ken? And I know in Palm Beach County and Martin, I haven't moved it forward as yet.
Thanks as always, Terry. Let's see. Oh, I see your faces too now that I showed mine. Good to see everybody. I know several of us are looking forward to getting back to in person. Personally, I did an event last month with state approval to make sure it was okay to attend. And I'm scheduled to do a fraud watch presentation to a senior group down in Broward County early next month. And there are other folks calling, looking for speakers for their groups. Some are still looking at virtual, but right now the majority seem to be coming in requesting in person. Folks are clamoring to get back together, and I'm happy to accommodate them, but still have to go through all of the processes. So, but if I could share a little bit more since I have the microphone. I was listening to the conversation here, and one thing that just dawned on me was for the staff not to have to take the burden of all of this upon themselves. it seems like we have virtual volunteers who want to stay virtual, who are willing to help find virtual opportunities and maybe take a leadership role in coordinating those, as well as volunteers who are like myself, who are interested in getting back to in person. And I can work with other volunteers who are doing that or be a part of that team, so that it's not all incumbent upon the staff to try to manage who's interested in virtual, who is adamant about virtual. And seems like you could use volunteers on a role that would help you manage that. I just thought I'd share that. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Ken, for sharing that. Ellen, was there anything else? I guess it's Sarah now, right? In the few minutes we've got left here, Sarah, would you like to lead us here?
Yes, I would. Thank you. So, so the question I have is for you all is, do you include face-to-face and virtual volunteers in the same meeting? I know we've discussed that some, but then the next part is how and with what technology? So a second part to that would be, how long do you expect to hold hybrid meetings? Are you going to offer a hybrid option to new volunteers or just current ones? And then have you noticed a difference in volunteer reaction with in-person? I think we've covered some of that. You know, of course, we can have additional discussions about some of it, but I want to say one thing, and that is that we were on a call the other day with the office, was it OCE or OVE? I can't remember, but it was, you know, for staff and volunteers, and they gave us a lot of information, but what I gathered from that was they wanted it to be sort of either in person or virtual for now, and then hybrid is sort of a option 3. And I think it would be really interesting to hear people's ideas about it. I know that there are some challenges with equipment and some of the things. And I remember, I think it was it Mary? Isn't Nevada doing some where you guys did get some of that technology, and then it's been a bit of a challenge. So I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it'd just be interesting to hear people's experiences with that. Ernestine from Ohio, go ahead.
I did not mean to be first. We've had a couple of sessions where the AARP volunteers were in person in the office doing a presentation to a group that was also in a room. It was a faith-based group. So I don't know what you call that, but it worked well for that particular group. We also have volunteers who would like to remain virtual. We have some who are willing to do both virtual and in person. And we're just trying to find that group of volunteers that we've not heard from that will make a decision about continuing as a volunteer or coming back, if you will, and what it is they would like to do.
Thank you. Can you share, were there any challenges that you saw that with that, or did it, you said it seemed to go smoothly, but I'm just curious what your take was on that.
The challenge is whether the other group is sophisticated enough in the technology, if you will, so that in fact it goes well. The other challenge is when you have a group in one room and we are as a group in another, the questions don't flow as well as if everyone is either on Zoom or everyone is in person. Someone has to filter that question because we can't hear the people in the room if there is no microphone. So someone has to tell us what their question or concern is.
Yeah.
That's a little, it makes it a little bit awkward, if you will.
Kind of clunky, yeah. Anybody else? Megan. We can't hear you, Megan.
Hi. On the topic of the hybrid meetings, I think one of the things that specifically our speakers team talked about last month is just the convenience of having the option to sign in remotely for a meeting, which I think is like the value of the hybrid meeting. If it's the middle of winter and we have a snowstorm and it could be tough travel, or maybe a volunteer isn't feeling well and they have a cold and they don't, can't come into the office. So to me, the idea of a hybrid meeting is really around flexibility and kind of meeting people where they're at, whether it's geographically, like we've had volunteers join the speakers team that are not in the Twin Cities. And so it's making sure we're remaining inclusive of that group, but also, understanding that there are people who want to meet in person. Some people might have transportation problems one day. So I think that's like the lens that I'm looking at the hybrid approach, and I'm hoping that we can make it work. And there obviously the technology is this. People did hybrid meetings before COVID. Like they are not new. I think it's just around figuring out what technology we have currently that can make it work, or what we need to invest in to make sure that everybody is having a good experience. And learning how to facilitate hybrid meetings, I think too.
Yeah. Well, and there have been some good meetings that was mentioned in chat, or just some good material out there. And I think some of it's just going to be practice on what works and what doesn't, So Kathy mentioned that in ARP, there's a line in the sand around hybrid events for the public, sort of discouraged. But, maybe hybrid volunteer meetings, which are meetings most people are talking about today. And then Ellen mentioned something about, again, there's some really good sessions with hybrid, and that Ernestine, that you hit on the head, that we need designated facilitators or people to set up. And I think, so I just, for a call out, Becky Hayes is on the call, and she's our volunteer tech lead, and she's just been invaluable. And because they wear so many hats, it's not just virtual tech, it's helping a speaker with setting up their USB port, or different things that they do. So yeah, so I just think having a volunteer cadre of people who know what they're doing with the tech is so important.
All right.
Or staff.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah, for taking that last question. And thank you, Terry, and everyone for your wonderful contributions today. I know this won't be over. Our discussion will continue in other forums, but thank you very much for sharing your information with the exchange. And as I said, we'll be posting the recording, the chat log, and the transcript on the group chatter on Thursday. So for the rest of you, have a wonderful week. And it's great to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Florida, for all you did today. We're excited.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We're excited.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good seeing you, Dr. Tiara. Dr. Mary with the tiara. It was really good seeing you there. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Kathy, it's Byron.
Yes, Byron.
A question. From discussions today.
Do you want to turn off the recording?
Yeah, sure.
The high